Yeah, I thought that happened. What time is it? What are we doing?
3:31.
Oh, 3:30. Mayor Coos, how are you?
Fine, how are you all?
Okay, Mayor Roth is trying your seat out. You said it's better than the seat in Perryville.
Oh, that's recorded.
On the record, I never said that. Let's wait 60 seconds, folks, see if we get anybody else come on, and we'll get started. We do have a quorum.
Yes.
Make sure it's filled up. All right, that's close enough. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the December 12th general meeting of the Bainbridge Development Corporation. Before we even get into the meeting, I just want to remind everybody that in January and February, we have state holidays on the third Monday, and therefore we go to the fourth Monday for our meetings. So I wanted to give everybody advance notice of Jen has January 23rd, but it's the fourth Monday also. What's the date, Jen? Do you know offhand?
The fourth Monday. Looks like the 23rd.
I think it's 23rd, that's right.
Mhm.
That's the way that works. So that, I'll just give you all a heads up that the BDC meeting in January is the fourth Monday and also the fourth Monday in February. And with that. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Now, I'm going to ask everyone today is on the general votes, we're going to raise our hands, keep your hands up so Jen can count. And then on the other votes, we're going to we'll do an in-person count to make sure we have a majority to pass those action items. All in favor of the agenda, hold your right hand up, please. Okay, the motion passes. Announcements. The only announcement I have is, and I would say this at the end, but I want to make sure I don't forget to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah, happy holidays. I would just say one thing is for the last year, whenever I've needed to put my own life in perspective, I think of Ukraine. And it puts me right down to a perspective. So there are a lot of people who are suffering, so remember them, but also have a good time with family and friends this Christmas. You received the minutes in advance from Tony. Everybody have a chance to read the minutes? Any questions on the minutes? Have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? Matt Roth, motion to approve, or Dave Rudolph, I'm sorry, Matt. Second? I'll second. Second, Matt, thank you very much. All in favor of approving the minutes, raise your right hand. Thank you very much, motion carries. Okay, Treasurer Hand, please give us the financial update.
Okay, as is our custom, I'm going to speak to the Consolidated Financial Board Report that's in your package for November. As we always do, we begin with our liquidity, which is at a little over 1.3 million. And you see that about 37,000 of that is in our operating account. We continue to hold some certificates as well as a money market account. Our receivables related to the ESCA continue to be sufficient to offset the payables that we have with that. And there's always a concerted effort to make sure that we're not incurring liabilities before we actually have cash in hand to make sure that they're covered. So all of that continues to kind of go as agreed. And you'll see on here that for the end of November, we have this $92,000 payable that is owed to Commerce. We'll share with the board that we've had some interaction with the folks at Commerce. Tony and Carl were on a call with those folks late last week. We requested that we look at both the number to make sure it is the correct number. It is obviously, we've been through the audit process, but had some discussion about whether or not there could be some forgiveness. The result of that is there is no forgiveness. These are the funds that are used to pay the attorneys that have done work on our behalf over the years. We owe this money. A lot of this relates to legal work that was done on our behalf some time ago when we actually didn't have money to pay these invoices. We can pay this now. So the upshot, as we've talked about with the board, is they will send us a final invoice for this. And our game plan is to pay it and clear it off of our books and records. So Tony, I don't know if we have received that final number yet or not. We have. And what's the final amount? Do you know?
It's 94,200 something.
Okay, just shy of $95,000.
Yes.
So I'll come back to that in a minute with a motion, but let's talk also about November's operating performance. We had $29,000 of expenses in November. That was less than what was budgeted at $35,000. So we had a $6,000 favorable variance there with some, very minor categories, a couple of $100 above what was in the plan. Our disbursements related to the ESCA were covered by the cash receipts we had for the ESCA. On a year-to-date basis, we have taken in the support payment from our development partner. We've spent $168,000 against a budget of $192,000. So we remain well within plan, $24,000 favorable to plan. And through a 5-month period, our net surplus is $247,000. And again, in the very far right blue column there, you see that our disbursements related to the ESCA are matched by our receipts of funds to cover those expenses. So I think our financial condition remains very stable, very healthy for the outlook in the immediate future. I'd recommend 2 transfers today, all out of the same account. So really transferring $245,000 from our money market account to our operating account. $95,000 of that will be to position us to pay this money that we owe to Commerce and clear that liability from our books. And the other 150 will be just kind of replenishment of our operating account, which should carry us into April or May, at which time we would look at all this again. So Carl, that's my report, and the motion would be to transfer 245 from money market to operating.
Okay, well, I'm going to accept the motion and I'll take a second and then see if there are any questions. Can I have a second to the finance report recommendations?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mario. I just want to make one comment. Chick mentioned it, but Tony and I did talk with representatives from Commerce regarding the outstanding 94,000 plus bill. Back in 2013, the BDC had no money. And during that, we literally had no money. And during that time, we did use services from the AG's office. And therefore, the agreement was signed that we would reimburse that money at a date when we had the money. And with that, since the date of that agreement, we have paid. There's one minor exception of a couple of thousand that got, okay. But since 2013, we have paid bills to the AG office on time. But these were fees that preceded and we're in that agreement. So I just want everyone to know it's legit. And I agree with the treasurer. Let's get it off our books and be done with it. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote. Tony's going to call the roll. What you're doing is you're approving the financial report, the recommendation to transfer $245,000 from the money market to the operating, and also when the final accounting is done, to pay off this debt to the Attorney General's office. Dave,
Just a question in regard to
speak up a little bit.
regards to the sending money to the state. Has there been a request to the state to begin a loan?
Mhm.
And they refused to get going.
Well,
They did not refuse. Let me, what they said is that this is the way we pay our lawyers.
Mhm.
And if we did it for you, we'd have to do it for many other clients that we have across the state. And therefore, we cannot offer any leeway on this. And the person that's, I don't know how many people know Signet, but Signet was the one explaining it. And she was very matter of fact, but you could tell she wished she could give us other news. But she has been asked this question before. And I think the answer is always the same.
Thank you.
Okay, Tony, call the roll, please. And a vote in the affirmative is approving the financial report and the treasurer's recommendation.
Bill,
Approved.
Mario,
Approved.
Dave,
Approved.
Matt,
Approved.
Chick,
Approve.
Carl,
Approved, Laura.
Martha.
Approve.
Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Okay, we're going to go into committee reports now. And Joe Brand can't be here tonight, so give us a Tone School report. It's Tony.
Joe and I connected on Friday to go over his report for the Tome School. We have connected with DGS. They have the executed contract for the roof repairs. And the contractor, which is York Roofing, as a part of York Builders. They are mobilizing. They came out on site just to check site access around Headmaster's house to see if they would need to do any additional clearing, what equipment they might need to bring in to be able to access the roof. But they should be scheduled by the end of the year to get the closure of Headmaster's roof.
Environmental, you received a report from Mario. Mario, you have anything else to say?
I'll hit the highlights. MDE's been out here to look at the embankment, so we're moving forward with that. Hopefully we sign off.
Speak up a little bit.
Hopefully they sign off on that soon. Landfill monitoring, I mentioned at the last meeting that we had a gas well that was damaged that is being carried out, but we had to make sure the Navy's okay with what we're doing. And the developer is covering that cost, so that's good. We alternative energy, we may have been pushing a little bit faster than we needed to, even though we were going slow as it was. Because we got some things we need to take care of. What's the long-term stewardship of the landfills, for example? What's the long-term stewardship of the embankment? I know that's not related to alternative energy, but it's something we need to look at. So something that Tony and I are going to talk about offline and advise better in the future. So
Very good. Thank you. We have the executive director's report and we have several items, and Tony, just go from one to the next.
Alrighty, I'll stop at each topic in case anyone has questions. For phase one, the site work is continuing as expected. The wet weather has caused delays. It's a bit of a joke with the contractors. They can tell you every day that it's rained. And they have one blessing, I suppose. The wet weather has caused them to shift a delay in their construction schedule. So they are not working, they're not working as early in the morning as they had been. So that's definitely something that the property owners around are much happier. They're starting concrete pours at like 6 a.m. as opposed to 2 a.m. So that's been a good thing for the folks in the areas. Building B and C are still under concrete work. Building A is mass grading, and then building D, if anyone's gone along 276, you can see that they're fully engaged on the clearing and the conversion of those stormwater ponds. Any phase one questions? No, we don't have a tenant to announce, I'm sorry.
Those-
Begin with that news.
Those announcements will come from the MRP and from the Office of Economic Development from Cecil County. They will not come from us. That'll be their news, and we will gladly cheer when they make those announcements. Phase two.
Phase two, all of the site work has been completed with the Navy on activity-based sampling, so all of the data has been sent over to the lab. We don't expect, given the holidays and government leave, we don't expect to have anything this year. Likely first quarter of 2023. There's, as expected, there's been no issues with any of the preliminary data.
Infrastructure.
The 275, 276 permit issues were
Question for Tony on the road work. SB 541. I'm sorry.
Have we taken any more significant complaints directly with whatever it's?
No, I have not heard from anyone else. We put out all of our information on social media if anyone has any concerns. Any of the folks that had expressed concerns previously, we followed up and there haven't seemed to be any other issues. I know that they want to get that work done as quickly as possible, because as I mentioned, they can't get an occupancy permit until all of the road work's finished. One of the things that they cannot control is the weather and how damp it is. They can only get so much done when the roads are so damp, but they're really pushing for it. Water and sewer is pretty much finished. They are installing a connection over to the mobile estate park on 276 for the county's request. And then the electricity plans are set. They're going to start installation of that. They're still in design phase with PG&E on gas, but besides that, all of the other infrastructures going smoothly.
Thank you. SB 541.
DNR had presented their draft report associated with the SB 541. That is due to the General Assembly by the end of 2022. In that draft, DNR cites multiple complexities that should be resolved prior to moving forward, and the call to defer pending resolution would require subsequent action through the legislature. In the meantime, BDC will continue to serve as a resource. We're a part of the advisory committee's historical information and just factual details.
Any questions for Tony on SB 541?
Good, not a question, but is that for public distribution?
I don't know. I would assume so.
That's DNR's call.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's up to it's DNR's report. And what they did was they shared it with all the members of the task force. I have not read it. Okay. With it, but that's not our call. That would be it's DNR's draft report, and it's not our call to give it out. And with that,
Could we request copies for the members of BDC?
sure, we can
I can certainly ask DNR.
we can ask.
I don't know.
We can ask if we
If
can.
there's anything in there that we should be concerned about.
I don't think so.
Well, bottom line, his question was, can we ask?
Right, absolutely, yeah.
The answer is.
yeah.
we can ask.
Good,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have two items of new business today. Both of these are going to take action on our part. One of these is new to you, maybe, the controlled hunt. We have done a controlled hunt in the past on Bainbridge property, but the first one we're going to do, you are aware of, is the grant we had to provide to DGS in partnership with Cecil County government to receive the grant funds. That's what the grant is for. The grant is an application to get the funding. And with that, Tony gave you a copy of that to look at. I don't know if you want to make any summary comments, Tony, or you want to, okay, Tony's going to make some comments and she'll be glad to respond to any questions or comments you might have. Again, this is a partnership that we have with Cecil County government. And with that, this does require a vote from us tonight. Tony?
So everyone received a copy of the MOU, and this is specifically to the use of the grant, not necessarily all the details of what exactly will go into the infrastructure project. But the purpose of this was to ensure that we all had an understanding and agreement of how the grant funds were going to be utilized, while MRP has already initiated and is incurring cost for engineering and planning and those sorts of things. So the parties are BDC, MRP, NTPM, and the county. The responsibilities of the developer in a snapshot, they will handle all the design requirements per state and local laws, execute all necessary contracts, handle permitting approvals, bonds, etc., oversee the development and construction, perform all necessary confirmation testing, pay any and all costs that exceed grant funds, grant any transfers or easements required by the town, county, or BDC, comply with all grant policies and requirements, provide all grant draws and documentation to BDC and Cecil County for review and approval prior to submission to DGS, and allow third-party accounting to audit the project file at random to ensure compliance. BDC's responsibilities, we are to grant access to the site, cooperate on the grant project, work with all parties to secure the grant funding, and then enter into any transfers or easements in connection with the project. Cecil County has the same responsibilities as BDC, with additional of inspection and oversight for design, construction, and testing of the roads, because they will be to the county spec. The off-site roads will be deeded to the county, the on-site roads will be deeded to the town at completion. That is a snapshot of what's in the MOU, but happy to answer any questions. And this, so we approved the grant project application that was submitted to DGS. It was approved by the developers. It was approved by the BDC and the county. This would be the next step. And then we would ultimately get a grant agreement from DGS. And that is when we would basically be agreeing to the terms of the grant and allowing for draw of funds against the grant.
For Tony? Before we take action, I want to thank County Executive Warnberger for the assistance of your staff on this initiative. Thank you very much. They did a tremendous job. I have a motion to pass to approve the project MOU.
I'll move for approval.
I have a motion, second.
Second.
Second. Thank you. Matt Roth, second. With that, Tony, call the roll.
Bill,
Approve.
Mario,
Approve.
Dave,
Approve.
Matt, Martha,
Approve.
Chick,
Approve.
Carl.
Yes, approved. Thank you very much. Tony, just out of curiosity, what's the timeline from this point on?
So the DGS is hoping to have a grant agreement returned by the end of the year. That would be fantastic. I have gotten the deadlines in where we would fall on the Board of Public Works agenda. In order to make the February meeting, we would have to have our paperwork turned in by January 13th. In order to make the March meeting, we would have to have our paperwork turned in by January 27th.
Okay,
So those are, and the development team's aware of those deadlines and they're comfortable with those in a timing and cost perspective.
very good. Thank you. Appreciate your efforts on this. I know you've been totally involved. Now, sort of really changing topics. Controlled hunt. You did receive an application called permission to hunt on private land. You received that. I think it's pretty typical. I just want to stress, without stealing Tony's thunder, it's bow and arrow only. You must have a state of Maryland hunting license to use the bow and arrow. And you can only hunt when it's legal in the state of Maryland to hunt deer with bow and arrow. And with that, so we are granting nothing that is not already legal on other lands in the state. And then I said too much. So Tony, tell them what's going on.
As was, the topic was brought up recently that there were concerns that now that construction has started, deer are starting to migrate off of Bainbridge land. And we connected with DNR about a partnership hunt with DNR. There are two different options that DNR offers, which is a cooperative wildlife agreement. The concern with that is it's an open hunt managed by DNR, so we would have no control over who is on site. And given that phase one and phase two are close with one another, there is activity in phase one, there's nothing in phase two. We felt like that would not be a great option. And we do not qualify for a deer management permit because we would have to be able to make a claim that deer are damaging our land, and they're not damaging our land. The only other option would be that we can oversee a controlled hunt. This is, as Carl mentioned, this is the form that we had used previously. We ran controlled hunts from 2015 to 2020 and stopped once we had folks in the site, because we had folks all across the site. Now that there is no one in phase two, confirmed with the Navy and all of their contractors, that there is no one in phase two, we felt, and Roop Commerce, obviously, Roop and I went back and forth on this and talked about all the details and made sure that everyone felt comfortable with it, that we could allow a small group to hunt in the phase two area, minus the landfills and minus Tome School, to hopefully address the deer issue of them migrating. Obviously, everyone got a chance to look at it, but I just highlighted a couple things to bring up. It would be, this is for FY 23 only, so the hunting season that complies with FY 23, it's not indefinite. When we did this previously, the hunters would have to come every year and sign a new form to make sure that their hunting license is valid and all of those things. As Carl mentioned, bow hunting only. They cannot damage or cause any issues on site. They are allowed to have deer stands, but they must be temporary. The most important condition is they release the BDC of all liability, and they take all liabilities on themselves for not only their own safety, but any issues that they may cause with their presence or with their hunting. So they take all responsibility for any claims of loss, damage, liabilities, expense that are either directly or indirectly related to their use, occupancy, activities on the property. And they take all responsibility for personal injuries, property damage, or for the loss of life or property resulting from or in conjunction with this agreement. That is a blanket release for the BDC, and we've already talked to several of the individuals that we would grant access. They're folks that are the general contracting team or the development team, our own contractors that are familiar with the site, that we feel comfortable with on the site. And they're these are pretty standard terms when they accept the access to hunt on someone's land. This cannot be transferred to anyone. Part of the agreement is they have to have this written form with them at all times, so that if a DNR officer stops on site to conduct any inspections, that they have this, and if they do not have their written permission, then they will be cited because they really don't know that they have permission to be there.
Questions for Tony? Yes, Dave?
How many people?
We're gonna limit it to 10.
Okay, and they apply by coming to you?
They will have to come to Jen or I. We'll have to fill out the form with them, make sure all of their hunting information is updated. And then on a map, which is what we had done previously, each hunter has a zone. So that way they're all in their own space, no one intermingles with one another. They take it very seriously, but it works really well. And the general contractor, Jeremy, in previous years, we've always had a lead that we go to in the field. And Jeremy, the site superintendent, has offered to do that because he's very familiar with the site.
One last question, where was they parked?
They will have to come in the 222 entrance, so they'll park down at 222.
The main gate.
And somebody will let them in on the property there?
Yep, because they can only hunt during daylight hours.
But they set up before, what?
Mhm.
Hunters will set up before
Yes,
sunrise, so they'll be in the tree before, and then when the actual minute that the sun has risen,
Mhm, they're ready to go.
ready to go, so we're talking about half hour before. So somebody will be actually on site to do that.
Yep, that will be Jeremy.
That's 10 permits total.
Yes,
And we're sole sourcing those to contractors and
and I told the guys it'll be first come, first serve.
so, in the past, we've opened that up to the sheriff's office.
We did, yes, we had it with the sheriff's department, before, we had, an ongoing agreement with them.
One of the advantages, I believe, with, and we've talked about this extensively, I also want to reiterate, Tony and Ruth have had full conversations regarding this, regarding the liability aspects, is the folks who must have a license, as I've already said, but they also work on the property. They know the property. Okay, so it's not about they know where phase 2 is, and when they're given a plot, they'll know what that plot is and won't go wandering off site into somebody else's land, or the likelihood is not free.
Last question for you. Does this give permission to the hunter to go out to the deer in development 1 zone? That probably will happen because very few deer go right down,
Right.
and they're gonna run.
Mhm.
Especially in an area.
They can pursue into the other areas not approved for hunting. If they are approved, going after the deer after they shot. I mean,
Yes, and so MRP is aware of the controlled hunt that we are planning, and they don't have any issues if something would come cross over to coming and gathering that deer and harvesting it.
I just don't want somebody to get in trouble.
No, understandable.
Anybody, I'm sorry, Mario?
That's all right. The liability is something that always concerns me, and I understand we reviewed this with you. I just wonder if it's worth the paper it's written on. I mean, they really do hurt themselves. I know they've signed their life away on here. Are we really truly protected? I mean, their families can't come after us. I mean, should we make them have insurance?
Did you hear that, Ruth?
I'm sorry, I was trying to get off mute. We are protecting ourselves, BDC, as much as possible. And by limiting the area and targeting the people who are the hunters. And especially, we only have 10 licenses or, permits handed out. It should be, of course, we cannot completely erase all liability, but we are as protected as can be. Just like we did before, except we're more targeted on the people, because I think in the past it was more than 10 permits, right?
Yes, so when we've never limited it before, it was open to any officers. They did all have to have a form and we had to have their hunting license. But I know when they did the cooperative agreement many years ago, before I was here, that there was no control over who was on site, and I know that was problematic, so we wanted to avoid that.
I'm not trying to be the fly in the ointment, however, somebody falls and they become disabled.
What says?
I understand that, but now they want to start collecting because they're not able to earn an income anymore.
Mhm.
Because they don't have insurance.
I don't know how we can say, I don't know how
They
we can say.
have insurance in place though.
What?
So that's, and forgive me for jumping in here, obviously, the insurance
I
guy.
was gonna say-
I'm sitting there wondering if because this is a private, offering,
Mhm.
if we could require first off, a certain amount of life insurance, which kind of back ends, protects us on any type of liability claims or anything like that, or maybe even an umbrella policy of some sort. I don't know if that's reasonable or not, and to be honest with you, I'm not even sure if an umbrella policy really would cover such a thing if it was self-inflicted or that type of thing, but, I mean, the life insurance seems like it would make some sense.
I mean, I very seldom can go on somebody else's property with my company without providing a certificate of insurance. And I know it's a little, we're talking a little bit different. I know what this says and it's great. I like the language. However, I also know when you go to court.
My disclaimer as well is I'm not requesting I understand.
It's negotiable.
Hey, Room, can you hear me? I would add that I do believe that still have a shield of sovereign immunity, do we not? And notwithstanding that, people sue the state all the time, but sovereign immunity,
Okay.
which extends to us, I think will kick in and probably give us probably additional protection.
Okay.
I'm smiling, Mario, because nobody's gonna ever say to you 100%, there are no.
Oh, I know that, and I'm not looking for that. I just know, again. I gotta provide, Matt knows, I gotta provide COIs all the time.
Mhm.
No,
Can I ask a couple of questions, please?
sure.
Is there a significant number of deer on the property now? Let's say a herd of, say, 50 at this point in time? Does anybody know how many deer are around?
I do not know. I just know that several farms have reached out about concerns with deer migrating and causing damage to crops. And several folks that live along 276 are, have spoken up about how many deer are coming into the road and the damage to vehicles and dead deer at the end of their driveway.
So the next question is, are we going to even address them baiting the deer, which is a pretty common practice for deer hunters?
They all put corn out there.
Corn, apples, whatever. I mean, are we gonna encourage, are we gonna encourage the deer to stay on site? Or, I mean, I don't quite,
We
I don't-
can't control deer or whatever happens outside of our property, but if local property owners feel like due to the development in phase one, it's pushing deer down through phase two and portions of the fence line are down because of development, they are now coming through there and causing significant damage. The only real solution we can offer is trying to mitigate the population on site. And if you ask the contractors on site, they will tell you there are deer everywhere.
no, and I get it. And please don't misunderstand. I have no problem with hunting deer. I have several farms of my own and they're all hunted. And that's why I'm asking if we're going to have baiting of deer to encourage them to come in. And that's more maintenance. That's more visits, to the hunting site. These hunters get very, very territorial. And it's fine, as long as everybody knows that, in part of all of this, there will be baiting and extra activity.
Actually, we're gonna have to follow up on that, and get back to you. We don't have a response to that. I mean,
It's just a question, Carl. It doesn't matter. I mean,
and there's no way we're gonna make a decision around this table that will bait or not bait. That's just beyond.
I'm just concerned about, going into, vernacular that we don't fully understand and the legal. I think that,
As long as
enticing,
it's all comply, they have to abide by hunting laws in Maryland and Cecil County.
What did you
Okay.
say?
baiting, I think is in some places illegal and certain animals is illegal. I don't know anything about the deer.
Right.
Well, I think again, it's, hard. I don't think it's a debate on DNR that. When they have some-
Fair.
Can't do it on wildlife managed areas, but you can do it there.
Okay.
So I don't know when you're gonna do because I hunt, I don't know when you're gonna do the applications for the individuals. But they're gonna want to, once they know their territory, they're gonna wanna put a stand up
Right,
for a creeper. And they're probably gonna come in a couple days ahead of time. As soon as you tell them,
Mhm.
they'll get bags of corn and throw it down. Probably a couple days ahead of time so that you'll find it,
Right.
so.
So with that, what I think, and if I'm.
I wanted it, but now that I heard there's only 10, I guess I'm out.
So with Martha, what I'm trying not to define what she was trying to say, but what I feel is if our intention is to limit the movement of these deer, then we would essentially want them to stay on so that the food was there and they wouldn't go out
Mhm.
off of our properties, which I think the hunters would also want. But
Mhm.
again,
As long as it's.
as long as there's something in the verbiage that states that we're in compliance or everybody hunts in
Right.
compliance with DNR, then I think that we're
Well,
covered.
they have to have a hunting license.
Right.
So-
Right.
And there's a body, there's an easement or a big pond over there, right?
Well, the reservoir's in phase one.
But that's the way deer are gonna run when you hit them with a bow.
Exactly.
When you hit, archery or even a gunshot or buckshot, they're gonna run toward that. That's where you're gonna track them.
Okay.
Hidden weasel.
Okay, I need clarification here. Phase 2 belongs to the BDC.
Mhm.
It's our property. We are a state entity. So would we be considered like a Fair Hill? That's, because it's a state entity? I mean, I'm not,
I think DNR would give you a very quick answer.
we'll ask DNR tomorrow. How about that?
Because they may be able to call it real briefly for a month till January 31st, a wildlife managed area.
That's a good idea. Okay, we'll talk to DNR tomorrow and get some advice from them on how to handle that.
If we. So if we do wildlife management, we have no say or who comes on the site. Yeah, we've already already went through that with,
Now, we're not changing that. All we're asking DNR is to help us understand the issue of baiting.
okay,
That's all.
okay.
We're asking them we're not asking them for a decision. We're asking them to help us to understand it.
And it's one of those situations by being quasi-public, quasi-private,
Mhm.
that we may be treated, may make a judgment. Just go ahead and treat it as if it were private.
Right.
Yeah, and then they would probably say, for your own protection, post signs, put the posted signs up.
Mhm.
Say no hunting here, it's trespassing, it's illegal,
Mhm.
unless you have written permission to be.
Right,
Yeah,
This is excellent.
that's a good suggestion.
Excellent discussion.
From a legal point of view, from Root's point of view, I think you would be happy, Root, if we did note some signs.
Mhm.
Otherwise,
Go buy them.
we'll get people showing up who are not licensed.
Mhm.
So others were hunting.
Six also.
You put a bunch of those yellow, those orange signs up.
We know how well people read signs.
Were you gonna say something?
Doesn't matter if they're up, they're up.
Mhm.
Period.
But that's also why, because every year I connect with DNR. Given that we have site activity, I don't think, there is as big of a concern of folks coming on site to hunt that should not be given compared to when the site was completely vacant, but DNR, I've already been in contact with them to let them know we are exploring this option, but anyone, because they do random checks of the site, they know that someone would have to have this form. If they don't have this form with them, they should be cited. And even if they do have permission and they don't have the form with them, that's their fault. Because that's our way of guaranteeing that we don't have folks on site that are not supposed to be on site, because it's not safe.
Do we have to take any action at this point?
Like that.
What we'll do,
We'll lose, the hunting season will be over by the next time we meet.
we got,
So, not to belabor this, but a quick Google brings me to something that says it is illegal to place bait for hunting deer on state lands. It is legal to bait deer except on state-owned properties or state-controlled properties. So maybe the clarification will be whether we'll, from the baiting question, will that even be permitted here? And that's probably a point of clarification that will need to be made with the hunter.
But I don't think it's a make or break situation.
I agree.
I think
I agree. And the form says that they're gonna comply with all Maryland laws, including all those applicable to hunting. So as long as they're, staying within the regulations that the DNR has, I'm okay with.
I think at this point, we just need to figure out which one we're gonna be designated, if we're
Right.
private or state.
And we can certainly, I can add that, once we have the answer from the clarification from DNR, I can certainly add that on here.
I'll move for approval.
Well, just a second, and once, what we'll do is. Well, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna move for approval, subject to the clarification, one way or the other, so that we can. move this forward.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask is, can we have a tentative approval? Pending Tony coming back with this, with the specific answer? On that. So, Mary, would you make a motion to adopt?
Yeah, I move for approval, seeking clarification of our designations as state or private. If it's private, maybe we just put in there no baby.
Right, right.
Period. Maybe that's the answer right now.
Well, that's
It's the
right.
baby.
Baby.
Put that in there, no baby. Period.
Whatever the answer, whether it's yes or no,
We still don't want any
I
baby.
think whether you want baiting or not want baiting, or whether you get it approved by DNR or not, we want the control hunt.
Yeah.
Period. So I think my recommendation is vote for it regardless, with baiting or without baiting, provided DNR sanctions or advises otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think that we're debating necessarily how we want them to hunt, we just want to make sure it's within.
Follow.
the rules, right? So I think the vote has to be if we're gonna allow. First, that's it, that's right, and then you're
I'm okay
looking
with
at
that.
We'll clarify what we are going to say on this application
Yeah.
regarding baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
That's fine.
Mario's made a motion. Do I have a second?
Jen?
Bill seconded. Call the roll.
Bill.
Approve.
Mario.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Matt.
All right.
Martha.
I approve.
Chick.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Bill, see.
See how many chicken wings here, as long as they're not paying you. With regular.
Okay, I want to do a real quick update on the status of our office renovation.
They initiated work on the 28th. They have all of the drywall up in all of the offices and all of the walls except for the exterior back wall that's by the walkway. That's getting some more studs repaired and that is. I think we'll send some photos. Jen and I took photos in progress. But they want to make sure everything's dried out. They're doing some additional sealing by the roof. All of the electrical work has been installed and the general contractor and the technology folks have been in coordination with each other to make sure that the timing and the sequencing of everything works. We are really hoping that everything will be finished for the January meeting, but just in case we have location to be determined, we may be back here for one more month. Jen and I really just want to make sure that the system's up and running. We've been trained on it. We feel comfortable with it before we bring everyone in, because how disappointing would that be? We have mail system and we have issues. So we want to make sure they're all ironed out first.
We had a MBTA meeting, we had to shut down because
The system didn't work. It's been, I've been at in a number of meetings that have had electrical or technological issues.
Okay, I want to thank Bob, Elizabeth, Danielle, and Tom for checking in with us today. Appreciate the ex officio members participating. Thank everyone else
And it is-
here
Well, that's my.
today. Yes, Matt?
Well, one announcement.
Oh,
As of today, we will be, the mayor of Perryville, and Bob, sorry to step on your toes here, but we'll be having a Christmas party at Fifth Company on the 22nd from 5 to 8. I would love to see all my BDC colleagues there.
absolutely.
5 and 8.
Okay, 5, say it again, 5.
On the 22nd, from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock at Fifth Company Brewing Company. I'm joking with my wife, since this manifested itself yesterday, she's gonna be one cooking all the cookies. Baking all the cookies, so I'm gonna get home to be in trouble,
Okay,
so
again.
we'd love to see you guys.
the 22nd, 5 to 8. Fifth Company. If you haven't been to Fifth Company, you gotta go visit.
It's a good spot.
Gotta go visit.
Location.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Merry
Have a good-
Christmas. Thank you.
You're all.
Y'all next
Thank
year.
you.
Tony, we're gonna put the together just like tomorrow, just explain the whole thing. I'll make sure to get it. If we can just-
Yeah, I can send some more, absolutely.
Yes, I was gonna say that now. Let's send that in.
Again,
Say bye.
See y'all.
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
we'll do all those sheets and.